Hello everyone and welcome back for a new lesson. In this lesson we are going to learn about events. So far we have seen different data structures and we were altering some data and we were also retrieving some data from these structures. Now what we are going to learn is how we can log what we did in the smart contracts to the blockchain. Now I have again this game item. We have the name and power, but as you can see I have two new fields. First of all I have create events and then I have the transfer events. So these are event handlers in Move, and what they do is they actually store these events so that we can see what has happened here. For this we are going to of course import events from Aptos framework. Then we are going to call from this event handle, so it's going to create a handler for us. We are going to pass the type of structure that we have created for this specific event. In this case we have item create event. If you look at the item create event, it's just a normal structure which has drop and store. So the key point is our events need to have this drop and store abilities so that we can use them as events. So they are just structures which have drop and store abilities. It has the name and power, so it's just a replication of this game item without the event handlers. If you look at the player struct, again we have the same fields as we did in the last lesson. But again, here we have create events and develop events. We are going to store once we create events and once we develop this player. And for this one, we are going to use player level up event. Here we have this player level up event, which is the player address and new level. So what's going to be logged on the blockchain is what is the player address, what is the new level of the player. So we can say, oh, this address got to this level at this time. And again, we have one for player create event. And this is the event that we are going to call once we create a player. And we have item transfer event that we haven't talked about yet. And here we are saying, okay, this item, and we give the address of the item, is transferred from this address to this address. So now actually we are going to do the things that we did before, but now we are going to actually keeping track of what we did during these transactions executions. Now let's look at the first function, create item. Here we are creating a game item and we are creating a new event handler. And the first part is the same as the last lesson, but now we have create events event handler. And to create this, we are going to say from account call new event handle, and we are going to pass the type of event here, and which is our item create event structure. And then we are going to pass a signer, and which is the creator parameter for us. It's going to be the same for transfer events, but this time the type of structure that we want to, let's say, store in this handler is item transfer event, and we are going to pass this creator. One other difference in our function is that now we want to emit the event. So we are going to say from event call emit event function, and this is going to emit the event or log the event for us. And we say, okay, we want to store this event in here, and the place that we want to store is the game item that we just created. Here we are passing the reference mutably because we are going to make some changes on it. And then we are saying, okay, this is the event that I create. So it's just like creating and moving objects like we did before. We are creating the event on the right hand side. I'm saying item create event, the name is the name, power is the power. And we can also use the shortcuts. And then we are saying, okay, store this in here. And this is our main structure. And finally, I have this game item and I also updated this create events part. And finally, as usual, I'm going to move this game item to the creator. So what we did differently is that we initiated these two events in this game item, and then we used one of these events, the game item.create events, and we passed our newly, let's say, created events to this one. And finally, we have moved the updated structure to the creator. Different from the last time, we have the recording of what happened in this structure. This is the only difference so far that we have. If you look at the create player, it's just like the same. The name is the name and level is 1. And again, you can use it like this. I'm just keeping this so that you can get used to for both usages. And then we are going to initiate our events like we did before. From account, we are going to call new event handle, and we are going to pass the type of structure or event that we want to handle here. And finally, we are going to pass the signer as the parameter. And before moving, we are going to say this, emit this event. I want to have this mutable reference to create events field of this player structure, and I create the event on the right hand side, player create event, and the name is the name. And finally, I am moving this player to the creator, which has this player struct now has the necessary information for the player and also the event log or what happens during this process. Now we are going to look at this transfer item, and it's going to acquire game item, because to transfer it, first we need to acquire it. And we are going to get this from address from the signer as we did before. But the last time we actually imported signer from the standard library. Another usage for this is to directly say std signer. So we are importing from the std here instead of right on top. I would recommend importing this in the beginning of this module, but if you are maybe just going to use once, maybe you don't want to just import for using it once. Anyways, we get this address from owner signer, and then we get the item's address here, this object's address, as we saw in the last lesson. And finally, we borrow mutably this game item. We are mutably borrowing it because we are going to transfer it. And we say we want to emit this event, and this is the place that we are going to store. And we create our event structure. It has the item address field. We pass this item address. It has the from and to fields, and we fill these fields. And finally, we say we want to transfer this just as before. For the getting item, we don't have events here, so it's just as usual. We are just returning the owner of the given item. For get item power, we need to acquire this game item, and we are also going to return this U64, which is the power. Here we are acquiring the item and we are returning its power, and we don't have any events for this. And finally, we are going to level up a player. First of all, we get the player address, then we get the player. We are borrowing it mutably because we want to change the level of this player. Here we level up the player, and finally we say event emit event, and this is the part that we want to save it, and this is our event structure. We want to give it this to the player address, and for the new level we are going to pass the new level of the player. As you can see, we can emit events at the end of the function or even before it. That's for all the events. Thank you very much. In summary, events are the logs of what has happened in the blockchain. They are very useful in the real world applications, so that it would be much easier to see what has happened, and we can see the logs, and it's even more beneficial when you create a decentralized application. So thank you very much for listening on this video, and I will see you on the next one.